Better?
Okay, here we go. Amanda Martinez is Habitat Hero, is going to give us a Habitat Hero application overview. Amanda is the Habitat Hero Senior Coordinator for Audubon Rockies down in Fort Collins. So with that, Amanda.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Last little bit of PowerPoint presentations before we get our hands a little dirty. I'm going to go through the application process for the actual Habitat Hero program, which is a core program of the Audubon Rockies, and then of course the Cheyenne High Plains Audubon Society also has programming within the, sorry, things turned off all at this different times, within the chapter, which has been a program almost as long as Habitat Hero has been a program overall as well. So I'm going to give y'all a little bit of basics. I don't think this group needs much on what Habitat Hero is, and then jump into what kinds of landscapes qualify for Habitat Hero spaces, and then go through our tiered criteria system, and then hopefully I'll have time to show you where the application is on our website. And then we do have some examples of the 2 gold level Habitat Hero gardens that were certified in 2024. So as you all might be aware, Habitat Hero is a program that works towards building empowering engagement and providing resources so that people can build their own native landscapes that benefit birds and other wildlife. So right now we have over 440 plus Habitat Hero landscapes that are certified. All of those certifications come through Audubon Rockies. They don't go through the local chapters. So they all come to me as the senior coordinator, and I review the applications. So in general, a lot of people might think, well, what kind of space can become a Habitat Hero garden? Really, the program is set up so that any kind of space can be a Habitat Hero garden. We want to work with you with whatever kind of space you have. The most common type is the residential yard, people building spaces and habitat in their homes. That can look like things going in the ground. It can look like things going in containers. Container gardens can also be built if you don't have necessarily like a patch of land. And say you have a balcony or a patio, you can also make that a Habitat Hero garden as well. And then we also extend this to businesses and commercial spaces. Schoolyard gardens have become Habitat Hero gardens. Public lands and municipalities have participated as well. And even some urban agricultural lands and some orchard spaces have also done it in the past as well. So what does the Habitat Hero landscape look like? I'm going to talk about the components of the Habitat Hero garden. So we're looking for a diversity of native plants. Everybody here is pretty familiar with what that means. But really the purpose of the native plants in the Habitat Hero garden is to provide food sources for birds and other wildlife. And then we're looking for our habitat structure, water sources, removal of invasive species, a reduction in chemical fertilizers, elimination of hazards or those ecological traps, and some stewardship practices, your volunteer, I like to call it outreach aspects, and some sort of continuing education components as well. And then we do have community science on there, but that is actually an optional part of the application. So everybody today has kind of done a great job of giving you an overview of what these landscapes look like, what you can do in your spaces, the kinds of plants you can put in. Lauren basically went through kind of how to get all of those things in your yard. So you're looking for, on the application, these are the 5 food sources that you'll be saying whether you have or not, like how the native plants are providing these food sources in your space. And we're evaluating the overall landscape. I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion when someone's applying, thinking that it's just maybe the patch of garden that you've overhauled in your yard and put in those plants. But you're building an ecosystem here, so we are wanting to look at what you have altogether. If you have native trees that are providing berries, we don't want to discount that, right? We want you to include what you already have. And then we talked about this, there was a lot of talk about this today as well. We want to see that structural diversity or those habitat layers in the space. So we're looking for your ground cover, mid-story, and canopy. And then I'm going to kind of just go through all of the different aspects and then show you how the levels break down into what you need to get a certain level certification. Your water source. That is a requirement throughout all 3 levels of the application process, but I don't want people to feel overwhelmed by it. It doesn't have to be a big, grand fountain. You don't need to build in a pond. Sometimes it can be as simple as we've seen people just kind of taking metal or even plastic trash can lids, flipping them upside down, filling them with water, cleaning them on a regular basis, and then putting them back out every day with fresh water in them. So they can be all of those things if that's what you want in your space, and that's great, but it doesn't have to be. And then in terms of providing water for birds, birds actually don't like to drink out of really deep ponds of water. Hummingbirds actually will like to drink from things that are dripping. So if you do have a fountain, that might work. This fountain works for this hummingbird, but songbirds, our smaller birds, actually only want like 2 or 3 inches of water to get in there and drink and bathe. Anything else is going to be too deep for them and kind of puts them in more of a vulnerable space while they're there drinking and bathing. So you really don't need that much water. I know in this dry climate, that could be a hindrance as well, just because the sun is intense, the wind is intense, so it might be something you have to keep up with more regularly depending on how much water is there. But if you want for songbirds to enjoy water in your yard, they really don't need that much space. And then we do also count natural water sources if they're near the property. Right now, if it's within about half a mile, we would consider that as providing water, just because most wildlife doesn't go too far from their water sources. Most wildlife is going to be within a mile or 2 of a source of water. So if you have, I don't know that will necessarily come into play as much here on the plains, but if there were like a pond or a stream or something nearby, that would also count for this criterion. Okay, invasive plants. So this is kind of a big guy. Essentially what we're looking for as part of the program is that you as a gardener and as a homeowner are aware of the invasive plants that are in your local area. Again, we're going to be evaluating the overall landscape, so not just like the garden areas that would have been restored or added, but the whole property space. So be aware of them, get rid of them as you can. It's a battle, I know. So that one, we're just looking for essentially how much percentage of the yard contains invasive plants, and there's no 100% invasive free as a criterion. That's just a bit much, so I'll get into that in a little bit.
Excuse me, but if, I mean, you have the thistles up there, and those, you know.
Right, that's an invasive plant.
They're essential food items, you know, so what, would you still consider that as an?
So that is a bull thistle, which is an invasive thistle. So there's your native thistles but that specific one is the little finch on the bull thistle. So they will still use it and then spread it around. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I meant to mention that. And then there's the reduction to and elimination of pesticides. So what we're considering pesticides is both synthetic and organic. And what I mean by organic is like the more natural organic brands of chemicals. So that includes anything from insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, and rodenticides. We want to do our best to strive to be 100% pesticide-free. But I understand that, you know, if you're battling invasive plants or you're working your way through the process to get rid of using pesticides, we have a tiered system for that as well. And the reason that we also count the more natural or organic pesticides is because some of them are still indiscriminate and will kill all insects. And if we're really looking to build habitat for birds and other wildlife, we don't want to take away that essential food source. Eliminating hazards. So I kind of consider this to be a pretty big one for Habitat Hero gardens and certified landscapes, because we're essentially inviting wildlife into our space, and we want to make sure we're not essentially setting them up for failure by creating what's called also ecological traps. So we want to treat our windows to reduce the reflectivity and make them less transparent. So if you have bug screens on the outside, you're good to go. That's actually one of the most effective ways to stop birds from flying into your windows. And then there's all these options like the screens that have the lines, makes them more visible, the dotted ones that you can buy and to add to your windows. And I know some people might think, well, you know, I'm just in my house. I'm not like a big high rise. You know, how much glass, how much could it be a problem? But collision fatalities with residential spaces is actually 44% of deaths, so for birds. So it's actually a pretty big number. So we do want to make sure that we're addressing that, especially as you're adding in water and feeders and native plants and bringing those birds into your space. We don't want them colliding with the windows. Then there's also reducing your outdoor lighting, and the big guy, domestic cats. So I love cats. I was a cat person. I've always had cats, but it is a requirement that if you are applying and you have outdoor cats, that could take you out of the running. So we want to make sure that cats are indoors. That's the silver and gold level standard. And then I did recently add in that if you do have cats outside, that they be left in a secure enclosure. So think of like your catios, or if you have a patio space that's screened in or something like that, you can do something like that as well.
Well, hon, we have a real problem with feral cats in this town.
So this is cats that you own. We don't expect for you guys to be responsible for the feral cats in the neighborhood, and it is. I'm from Texas. It's a huge problem where I'm from as well. So.
Well, it is going to affect, you know, bird life and stuff like that in your yard.
Sure. So, and that's part of the. You know, you have to think about that in terms of like those ecological traps, in terms of where you're putting your water, where you're putting your feeders. Are you setting birds up to be attacked by cats and other predators? So these are things that you want to be thinking about as you're setting up your space.
What happens when you have like Cooper's hawks moved into your cottonwood tree, and then you used to feed your, you know, songbirds?
So that,
They're in there
sure.
eating off of your songbirds.
Yeah, so that is part of why it's important to build that structural diversity in those vegetation layers, because I mean, you're not gonna save them all, and that is also part of the life cycle. Hawks have to eat as well, and so sometimes if they know where to go, they know where to go. But if you have a structured, if you have those layers of vegetation, you're giving them a better opportunity to be able to get into cover before they become a meal. Might not always work, but yeah. So there's pros and cons to sort of everything we get our hands into, right? But we're trying to give all birds a a chance to
Let me-
survive.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. If we can save our questions till the end, that would be good, because people in the back can't hear your questions, so it doesn't help very much.
Thank you. Okay, and stewardship activities, there's lots of options that you can choose from. Darren just talked about a bunch of them, building brush piles and leaving the leaf litter as much as it will stay around. So these are all options that you can partake in. Oops, sorry. Where was I? Yeah. Wrong button. And then you have our education and volunteer and outreach. These shouldn't be seen as something to be overwhelmed by. There's lots of options. You can also, in the online application, there is an other box where you can also put something in if you feel like you're not seeing it, but you feel like you're doing something that should count. Add it in, we'll review it. But these are just kind of ways to help you learn more about what it means to be a Habitat Hero gardener. You guys have actually already checked off the education one. You're at a Habitat Hero program, so you're good to go. And then in terms of the volunteering and outreach, I did make some adjustments to that to try and make it a little bit more accessible to people. We might add some other options in there as well. But this is really just about sharing the program and sort of like spreading the information so that the program will continue to spread and grow, and we can continue to build those habitats around us as well. So that's what that one is about. So I know sometimes it can seem overwhelming to people being like, well, I'm busy and I have all these things to do, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. So here's the tiered levels of recognition. So we have a bronze, and it's kind of small, I apologize. So we have bronze, if I could get the right button, bronze, silver, and gold. So I know a lot of you picked up the sheets that we have at the table. So that's basically what's on that sheet. And everything that you saw before is the options on those criteria for how to make these things happen. So for bronze, you only need 2 types of food sources, and then it moves up from silver to gold. Same with the habitat structure, 2 out of the 3 layers, 2 out of the 3 layers, and then 3 layers, and so on. So for invasive plants, that your landscape's no more than 20% invasives, and then it moves up from there. So these are all things that you can do to make these, to check the boxes off on these. So each one kind of just moves up as you get higher on the tiered criteria. Okay. And then I'm actually not sure if we have time for this. Yeah. So this is just to show you guys where the application lives on our website, because it could be a little bit hidden if you're at the main page. So you're just going to go to the Habitat Hero program page, and then you're going to scroll down and then become a Habitat Hero. So we have lots of other resources as well in the website to help you guys out as you're working on your gardens and thinking about becoming a Habitat Hero. And then once you get to this page, right here is going to be we're working on updating a lot of this. So what you guys picked up and I just showed you, that will be updated. That's currently the old one in there. And then you'll hit the submit your application. And then that will take you to the actual portal, just because of how it is on our back-end system. And so some of these questions are going to be updated within this month as well. But you can see where you can write things in. It'll tell you how many things to check off. Some of them are, check all that apply. If you check other on some of those other boxes, then you'll have a write-in box pop up. So everything just comes through here. And then we will be adding a section for you to be able to agree to send some pictures I think it kind of got lost in translation when we migrated over to an online system, but we do want to see pictures of the space. So nothing crazy, just because it'll be coming to me by email, so you don't have to overload it, but we just kind of want to see an overview of what the space is like. And then this is a more direct link. If you don't have to click it. It'll take you right to the page. Just in case y'all want to have that handy. Oh. And then some of the new questions on there aren't necessarily part of the certification process, but they're there to kind of help us get an understanding of what your property is like, and the background questions that will help build the program, and what we're hoping will be some higher metrics so that we can kind of show how Habitat Heroes are making a difference by planting their native landscapes. And then, so these are a couple of examples of the Habitat Hero gardens that were certified gold level. This is Earl DeGroot and Donna Griffin, who are here actually. So if you have questions about what they did, you can probably chat with them about it. So they have a lot of, they have a combination of native plants and vegetable gardening, which I thought was really cool. And some things are, as you can see, in containers, which is totally fine. There's no rules that say that it has to be in the ground. They have a combination. They have their bird bath, they have a bird feeder, so some level of ground cover, some level of mid-story, and then some level of higher canopy. And they've evaluated all three hazards. They've taken those things into account. And then just taking it, patches at a time, so everything is moving in stride. And then they're rewarded with lots of little bird visitors. And then here they have the, I'm assuming that's a little heater to keep it from freezing. And the front of their yard is pretty traditional, and then they focused on the backyard. So it doesn't have to be the whole space. You can do what makes sense to you. And then Earl did create a video on their backyard conversion. So if you're interested in seeing the video, he also submitted it to a competition. And so that's kind of being reviewed right now, but it's a fun watch. It's like 8 minutes long. So he talks about kind of what their process was and how they did things. And then let people take a picture of that. And then this is the second property where they focused mostly on the front yard and actually have a short grass native prairie in, which from my understanding was a lot of work, but so that might not be something for everybody, but it is an option. And then just kind of a border of some native plants. So just some ideas of what they have. I think they mentioned that there's a lot of yarrow in there, of course, Rocky Mountain penstemon, Western, I wrote it down, I forgot, Western valerian. There are some salvias and catmints in there, which isn't necessarily native, but it's still providing a nectar source. And then, of course, if you have any additional questions, I'm still here. That's my contact information. We have those handouts that people were looking through, and I have cards in the back as well if anybody has any additional questions or wants to talk about the process. We're definitely here to answer any questions.
Hey,